Welcome to Dune Chapter by Chapter. I'm Dominic. In the last chapter, we saw Paul Atreides take on Jamis in a duel. Jamis came out, and he challenged Paul. He called him out. He didn't believe him and his mother were the ones that were spoken about in the prophecy. So he called them out, challenged Paul to a fight, and he ended up losing. And it was a fight to the death. Paul killed him. And at the end of that battle, Jessica really went out of her way to hammer it into Paul. You know, she didn't want him to take any kind of joy or get any kind of high off of killing this person. So she said, so how does it feel to be a killer? She didn't want her son to start taking pleasure in the act of murder, and really hammered it home to him. So now in this current chapter, they are now attending the funeral of Jamis. And here again, we're introduced to some more Fremen customs that Paul and Jessica now have to, kind of maneuver and get around and work their way forward. And, Paul, he doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know how to maneuver these strange waters, so to speak, with the how the Fremen treat their dead. So now they have all of Jamis's things laid out, all his different belongings and stuff like that. And so how it works is each one of the Fremen, they get up and they say, I was a friend of so-and-so, at this point in time, they did this for me. So they go over and they take that that piece, that item that they want from that person, and it's kind of like theirs. So that's their way of respecting the dead kind of deal is, all the person's belongings gets taken by each member of the tribe or the troop. And as they take each piece, they say why that person was their friend. So like Stilgar goes up and he says, Jamis pulled me out of the way when the Hawk plane almost seen us, got me out of the way. I was a friend of Jamis, and he took Jamis's cloak. So that's how it's going. So they're all looking to Paul. They do it, they get up, they do it, and then they look at Paul, and they wonder, like, is Paul going to get up there and do it? What's he going to do? Paul doesn't know what to do because he just killed this guy in a duel. This guy didn't like Paul. Paul didn't like him. So how is he going to get up and say, well, this guy was my friend? Like, how is this going to work? And he doesn't know what to do. And so Jessica can see that in him. And she can see, he doesn't know what to do. So she gets up and she takes something and she explains why Jamis was her friend, goes back and sits down. So Paul sees that his mother has done this. So then he gets up, and what's really interesting, and this is an interesting thing in the book, and Paul gets up and he goes over and he sees that Jamis played the Basilet. So that reminded him a lot of Gurney Halleck, and he starts to wonder if Gurney Halleck is still alive or not, or is he already dead somewhere. So then he gets up and he takes the Basilet, and he's wondering, well, what did this guy give to me? What did this guy do for me? He tried to kill me. So then he gets up and he takes the Basilet and he realizes, what Jamis did for him. He gets up and he says, I was a friend of Jamis. Jamis taught me that when you kill someone, you pay for it. Because now he has that guilty conscience. And Jamis was the first guy he really had to kill. Like in that intimate way with a knife. Not just a spur of the moment self-defense thing. And then he goes back and sits down. And then the other thing that happens in this chapter that all the Fremen are amazed at is Paul cries. Because if you're in a society where water is so, cherished, the Fremen might have even evolved to the point where they don't cry anymore, just as a way to conserve water. So they're all amazed that Paul is crying. So then they all come over and they touch his tears and stuff. It's almost like they've never seen someone cry before. And then they say, Muad'Dib gives water to the dead. So it's a really interesting thing. And what I really find interesting is the comment made by Jessica about how people treat their dead and how that's a sign of civilization. And so actually, I'll read out exactly what she says, and then I'll talk about it. At her place in the circle across from Paul, Jessica nodded, recognizing the ancient source of the rite. And she thought, the meeting between ignorance and knowledge, between brutality and culture. It begins in the dignity with which we treat our dead. She looked across at Paul, wondering, will he see it? Will he know what to do? So I thought that was interesting, a really interesting comment. And I kind of thought about it for a while. And it is that's something that kind of separates, humanity or separates one species from another species, one species being sentient, one being completely savage. Like animals, they don't treat their dead like anything. Something dies, it's dead. Like they don't even really process it, they just move on. They don't bury it, there's no ceremony, there's nothing. Till a life form kind of evolves to the point where it starts to gain intelligence and stuff like that. And then that's a sign of culture and civilization that they start doing something for the dead. They realize, well, this person is gone, they're dead, they miss them. So they have to work that out somehow. So then they start to develop rituals, burial rites, and things around the people dying. And that's kind of like what separates, savagery from culture and civilization and stuff. That's a sign that, civilization is forming when, people start to, or creatures or whatever, start to treat their dead in a certain way, as opposed to where animals or something, I guess, of lower intelligence or whatever, something that's savage. I don't know how to put it in words. They just don't care. They just, something's dead. Do they miss it? Maybe they might miss the person or the thing or whatever, but there's no ceremony, there's nothing, they just move on. And then something else comes along and eats that thing. Whatever died. So I really like that phrase from that, what Jessica said from that chapter there. I thought it was really interesting. And, there's so much in this book that the characters say and do that really makes you think. That's what I really like about Dune. And so moving on, and then after the ceremony's over, now because Paul won that fight, he gets all of James's water. So it's measured out, and they kind of measure the water out in with rings. So that's how they measure the water out. So you get so many rings, how much water you have, and then you carry those rings, and that's how you know how much water you have, or how much water you can access. So he's given these water rings, and so Chani's giving him the water rings and stuff like that. And then he doesn't really know how to carry them, and then she says, well, later on I'll show you how to wrap them properly and stuff so they don't clang together when you're trying to keep quiet and all that stuff. And so then he gives it back to her and he asks her, well, can you hold them for me until I know how the proper way to carry them? And then everyone gets all quiet and there's like chuckles through the place. So there's meaning in these water rings. And there's a significance. I don't want to spoil it because they don't give it away in this chapter. But there's significance to a male asking a female to hold their water rings for them in the Fremen culture, which Paul doesn't get it because everyone's kind of chuckling, and Chani gets a little bit embarrassed, and Paul's looking around. He doesn't really know what's going on. He knows he's missing something here, but he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get what's going on with these water rings and why this is a big deal, because he asked Chani to hold his water rings for him. But, well, I guess you can kind of guess when you know where it's going with the water rings when you read this chapter. But, it might get revealed later on in further chapters in the book, but it doesn't get revealed right away. It's just like this awkwardness, and Paul's left with this question mark. It's kind of puzzled, doesn't know what's going on. And then the other thing that's in this chapter is they are taken to where they are storing a huge amount of water, a cache of water. And they take Jamas's water down there and they pour it in with the rest of the water and stuff like that. And as they go down there, Jessica is, they go down into this, like almost like a chamber or cave type thing. And Jessica is blown away because she can feel moisture. Because that's the thing, you're aware of, like, Frank Herbert really pounds it home in this book. In every chapter, he just keeps pounding it to the reader, like how scarce water is on Arrakis. That when you're out in the air, like even the air, there's like zero moisture in the air. So it's, you know, it chafes your skin, you can feel it burning. And then it's not just, and as Jessica points out in the chapter, it's not just a lack of water, it's a lack of moisture. Like there's no moisture in the air at all. You can't feel anything until they go down into this cavern. And Jessica's amazed. Everyone's amazed at the moisture in the air. And this is where she sees the mechanism. They got like a wind trap set up that funnels water down into this chamber. So the air hits the wind trap, goes down, shoots the air downward, and then the air condenses, and then they get the moisture out of the air. What little moisture there probably is in the air, they get out of it that way. And then they see like they got this whole, you know, thousands of liters like stored away then, like tons of water. And then Stilgar says, you know, we have thousands like this. You know, not every, only if not everyone knows where it is, and only a few Fremen know of them all. So they got a lot of this like spread out everywhere. And then he talks about how, you know, we're going to use this water to change the face of Arrakis, so that one day, you know, no man, woman, or child will ever want for water. They will be able to go to a well and get their water, drink their water, bathe in their water, everything. That's the dream they have for Arrakis. And then Jessica realizes exactly how much power that Liet Kynes actually got reined into the Fremen people with this dream. So it's like you're taking a scientific idea of terraforming Arrakis into a water planet, or a planet capable of water, holding water, and where people can live on this planet without without having to want for water and stuff like that. Taking that idea, that scientific idea, and getting to that scientific goal, but almost turning the scientific goal into a religion or a religious dream. It's really, really interesting and unique. That this is the whole dream that holds the Fremen together and holds their culture together. You know, the harsh environments of Arrakis actually dictates what their culture is. This is how their culture formed. Their whole culture is formed around conservation and collection of water and surviving on the harsh planet of Arrakis. And then their shared goal moving forward is terraforming Arrakis into a water planet, or water capable planet, but still preserving the worms. They said that, you know, to keep the deep desert for the worms. And then she realizes like what kind of power and fanaticism that Liet Kynes tapped into with this, which is interesting. And you know, when I read it, it reminds me a little bit of The Expanse and how the Martians are portrayed compared to people of Earth. Because in The Expanse, the Earthers are like lazy, or they're seen as lazy by the Martians. They're seen as lazy and useless because, you know, they're all on basic, and, you know, none of them work or anything like that. Or the Martians see them as very lazy. Where the Martians are seen as hard workers because they've got a shared dream on Mars. You know, they're all got something to do. There's lots of work on Mars because they're terraforming the planet. And that's the Martians' shared dream, is turning Mars into a place like Earth where you can go out and walk around without a dome or anything like that. And it's the same thing here on Arrakis, you know, where people can live out in the open and not be, you know, killed by a sandstorm or die of thirst or anything like that. And so yeah, and then Paul has another realization of his dream. He saw this whole thing in a dream, but it works out slightly different. This being down here where Chani asks him, you know, describe like his home world to her, you know, where Caladan is like a water-rich planet, like completely opposite of Arrakis. And then finally, we have the other thing I wanted to talk about that gets touched on in this chapter is Jessica does not like the relationship that's forming between Chani and her son Paul. She can see that Paul almost has like an attraction to Chani, and then just the way they're interacting and stuff like that. And she doesn't like it because she's still because she's still in that mode of thinking from a noble house, where all the marriages are politically driven. So she says, I got to watch out for this Fremen girl. I can't have my son hooking up with her and marrying her, because she can be a concubine. That's fine, but she cannot be Paul's wife, because she's still thinking in that a way that thought, because the father, Duke Leto, he wanted to ascend to the throne through a political marriage, or get married to someone who would benefit him politically, and keep Jessica as a concubine, because he never did marry Jessica. He always just kept her as a concubine. But now Jessica wants the same thing for her son. She wants her son to marry someone who will be politically advantageous to him, which a Fremen girl wouldn't be. And so she doesn't like this. And then the other thing is, Paul is starting to see something in his mother here, that his mother is doing, that even his mother isn't aware of it, because Paul refers to his mother as his enemy in this chapter. Unknowingly, she's his enemy, because she's still in that noble way of thinking. She wants him to have a political marriage that will marry someone that will gain him political power, and not just some Fremen girl. So marry for political reasons, not for love. Where now her intentions and all her actions towards Paul is pushing Paul towards that road or that path in the future he doesn't want to go down. And that is the unleashing of like this terrible holy jihad that will go right through the whole known universe in Muad'Dib's name, because he sees that in his future, and he sees his mother as one of the people that has sent him on that path because of her training, and her not wanting him to marry Chani for love or anything like that, just having Chani as a concubine, but marrying someone for political gain. So even though Jessica is not aware of it, Paul is. He's trying to avoid that path. He doesn't want to unleash that crusade that where millions die in his name. But his mother is one of the people that she's pushing him that way. So that way, in Paul's mind, she's his enemy. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one.